Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Vishwaya Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale Srimade Bhakti Vikasa Swami Namo Vishwaya Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale Srimade Bhakti Vedanta Swami Paramani Pracharya Nirvishesha Shanivada Bhashtra Vishataya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasa Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Karati Vachalam Alright, so Hare Krishna, welcome back to our study of Vedanta Syamantaka. So today we are in the 7th day and we are discussing the first chapter, the first ray, that is ascertaining the evidences. We are discussing about the pramanas and prameya. Prameya will come in from the second chapter onwards, but we have been discussing the pramanas through which we can attain the proper prameya, or what we have decided to be the proper prameya for this human form of life. So yesterday we discussed about, or from the last 2 days we have been discussing what is pramana, what is prameya, and different types of pramanas which are accepted by different schools of thought. Then we defined what prameya means. Pramana means prama karana, so instrumental cause of valid knowledge, that is prama karana, that is pramana. And then we also saw that there are totally 8 pramanas which are mentioned in Vedanta Syamantaka. But Jiva Gosvami in his Tattva Sandarbha, he mentions 10. We briefly saw all these 10, and we also discussed how the most prominent of these 10 are Pratyaksa, Anuman and Sabda. And other pramanas like Anupalabdhi, Arthapatti, Sambhava, then Upadan, and all those other Upaman. So these, and Cheshtha also we discussed, then Arsha is there. So all these things are included within these 3 pramanas itself. And finally we saw the quote from Manu Samhita where it's mentioned that clear understanding of dharma is possible only when one is well conversant with these 3. That is Pratyaksha, Anuman and Sabda. So today's discussion we are going to continue, and we are going to go into a little bit detail to understand what Sabda actually means. Is it any word or anything that comes from someone's mouth that should be accepted as pramana, or are there qualifications and qualifying factors also which are actually required to understand what is proper Sabda pramana and what is not proper Sabda pramana, right? So okay. Yeah, so we have already discussed that there are only 3 pramanas applicable. So shortcomings of Pratyaksa and Anuman. So now of these 3, now we are going to choose. We are going to choose which is the best pramana for meeting our goal, for attaining our goal. That is the supreme absolute truth, as Jiva Gosvami explains. That our aim is to understand who is the cause of all causes, and what is the absolute truth, what is my relationship with him, and to understand these prameyas, to understand who is Ishvara, is there supreme controller or not, if there is, who he is, then what about Jiva, who am I, then Prakriti, then Kala, Karma. These are different tattvas that we are discussing in Vedanta Syamantaka, and how to approach them, how we can understand and gain knowledge about these things. That is what we are doing the study of now. So that is these pramanas, and of these there are 3 have been like shortlisted, you can say, Pratyaksha, Anuman and Sabda. But there are shortcomings of Pratyaksa and Anuman also. So based upon the discussion that we had till now, we will have some idea of the limitations of Pratyaksa and Anuman. So we'll discuss that. So we are basically, of the entire, the broad set of pramanas that we have, we are zeroing in on something which is tangible, which can be perfect, and which gives us perfect knowledge. So shortcomings of Pratyaksa and Anuman, just read. Among these, Direct perception only apprehends something tangible and proximate, neither too far nor too close, such as a bird flying in the sky and the mascara around one's eyes. So, see, direct perception is pratyaksha. Okay, so these are interchangeably used. Anuman is inference, and as we discussed yesterday, the text in this color, in this blue color, is actually the translation of the verses of the Sanskrit text given to us by Srila Radha Damodar Goswami, and those which are in this, this dark brownish color, these are references from other text. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So this text is given by Radha Damodar Goswami himself, and he says direct perception only apprehends something tangible and proximate, which is neither too far nor too close, such as a bird flying in the sky. So when a bird is flying in the sky, we will not be able to get complete information about that bird. We may not be even able to know which bird is actually flying when it's flying far off in the sky. So that's something which is very far, we cannot get proper knowledge about that. And something which is very near to us also, we cannot understand much about it. That mascara is like this, this eye, this thing that they put, or the eyelashes, one cannot understand. The eyelids cannot be seen by the eyes, although it is the most closest thing to our eyes. So Pratyaksa has its limitation. A sense organ does not even perceive something tangible if the mind is not focused. So we discussed that also yesterday also, Nirvikalpa Pratyaksha and Savikalpa Pratyaksha. So if the mind is not focused, then although the sense organ may be in contact with the sense object, still we will not be able to gain tangible knowledge about it. As it is said, my mind was somewhere else and I did not see anything, although it might be happening right in front of us. Correct? So sense organ does not perceive something that is suppressed, like such as the stars and planets suppressed by the rays of the sun. So there are planets, there are stars in the sky, there is moon in the sky, but when the sun is brightly shining during daytime, we will not be able to see those stars and the moon. Although it does not mean that they do not exist. They are there, but our senses are not able to perceive it. Second, something not yet produced, such as yogurt in milk. Now milk contains curd also, and it's a specific process to bring out that curd outside. But just by looking at the milk, will we be able to understand that we can take curd out of it? It is not possible, correct? So Pratyaksha fails here. Something mixed, such as the drops of water discharged from a cloud and then mixed with a reservoir of water. So we cannot distinguish which water was there before, and when the raindrops fall into the sky, which were the raindrops which had got mixed into it. That is not possible to understand through just Pratyaksha. Something very minute, such as the atoms, even though close to one's eyes. So several things which we cannot see. And scientifically speaking, there is this spectrum. We can see from this frequency to this frequency, and beyond that, we'll not be able to see anything. Same goes with sound also. Between this frequency, or I think for vision it's wavelength, and for sound it's frequency. So between this wavelength and this wavelength, we'll be able to see, we'll be able to perceive something, we'll be able to see it. But beyond that, we'll not be able to see. Similarly for sound also, beyond something, beyond that particular frequency, we'll not be able to hear. So these are limitations of Pratyaksha. Sometimes direct perception fails, such as when one sees an illusory head and thinks this is the head of Yajnadatta. Okay. Now, so we discussed yesterday that some examples may seem a bit weird to us, but then these are classical examples. So this example will again repeat later on. So this is a situation where when there are open fields, not in the city, in villages if you go, there are open fields. Then when the twilight is going, or when sun is setting and it's not completely dark, and there are trees around, then one might look into the tree and he might see that the shadow of that tree or the appearance of the tree itself looks like a very tall man, or it looks like a head hanging from the branch of a tree. So it's an illusion. But is there really a head hanging from that branch of the tree? No. But then there's an illusion. So it's basically supporting the fact that Pratyaksha, we are influenced. We have this Brahma, Pramada, Vipralipsa, Karanapata, we discussed all that, no? So we have this tendency to get illusioned. So direct perception, just by looking at something, will not be able to understand if it is proper or if it's proper knowledge about that particular thing or not. There are limitations based upon the circumstances. And we can also say Pratyaksha actually is dependent on the circumstances and the environment around us. If it is very dark, we cannot see, right? Seeing is what? Seeing is basically the light falling on an object and then entering our eyes. So if there is no light to fall on an object and it does not enter our eyes, we will not be able to perceive that object. Correct? So our eyes are actually completely dependent on the presence of light. If there is light, we will be able to see something. If there is no light, we will not be able to see anything at all. Correct? So direct perception fails. We can commit mistakes. There is illusion that can happen. And here specifically it's mentioned this is the head of Yajnadattas. So now the person might be able to identify also that, oh, this looks not only just like a head, but it's a specific head of somebody like Yajnadattas. But still he cannot be sure about it because of the circumstances in which he sees. So the point is that direct perception will fail in such situations. Similarly, inference. Now we talked about Pratyaksa here, and the limitation of inference is mentioned in this. Although inference is capable of being applied to an object beyond sense perception through an indicative sign, sometimes it is seen to fail, such as when it is assumed that on account of smoke there is fire on a hill where a lot of smoke has been rising for a long time, but where the fire has been put out by the rain at that moment. Right? There is smoke. We discussed this yesterday also. If there is smoke, then we can infer that there is fire also. So the indicative sign of the presence of fire is the smoke. Right? That indicates the presence of fire. But then it can fail because if heavy fire was burning and smoke was rising out of it, and if rain has come and it has put out that fire, still smoke will come from there for some time. Correct? So just by looking at the smoke, we cannot completely and confidently say that there is fire on top of the hill. Maybe there was fire, maybe it is not there, maybe rain has come and because of that the fire has got extinguished and smoke is coming out of it. So only through inference we will not be able to gain perfect knowledge. Correct? Mr. Jiva Gosvami in his Sarva Sammadini commentary on text 9 for Tattva Sandarbha, he writes this. He says, consider how logical inference consisting of 5 parts, hypothesis, evidence, exemplification, application and conclusion also tends to deviate, especially when facts are inconsistent. For example, a tall pillar of smoke may gather on a mountain for some time after rain has extinguished a fire, or a mountain may appear smoky on its own during the rainy season. So there are 5 parts of anumana. Okay, we will just have a brief introduction into this because it will be very logical to understand. First part is this hypothesis, or also called as pratigya. Pratigya is that which we are trying to prove. So in this example, there is a fire on top of the mountain. So we are trying to prove, or our hypothesis or pratigya is that there is fire on top of that mountain. And what is the evidence? The evidence is that there is smoke. I am not able to see the fire, but there is smoke on that mountain. So that is my reason. That is hetu. That is my reason. My reason is because there is a smoke, I am trying to prove that there is a fire. So what is the correlation between fire and smoke? That is vyapti, or the basic general principle. The general principle is wherever there is smoke or wherever there is fire, there is smoke. That's the principle, and that has been gained through any of the pramanas, through either Pratyaksha pramana or through Sabda pramana. Either we have seen ourselves that wherever there is fire, there is smoke, or we have heard somebody say that wherever there is fire, there will be smoke. So we have that knowledge, and based on the knowledge, we have made a general principle, a vyapti, which is that wherever there is fire, there will be smoke. And my pratigya is I am trying to prove that there is fire. Hetu is that I am seeing smoke. And what is the vyapti? What is the reason why you are connecting the smoke with fire? Because wherever there is fire, there is smoke. Now application. Now this is my principle, that wherever there is fire, there is smoke. My application is that, oh, because I am seeing smoke here, therefore my application is that there is fire in this particular place. And conclusion is, chalo. So this is my application. I am applying it in this particular situation. Therefore my conclusion is definitely there is fire. So whenever someone is using logic or inference to come to a conclusion, these are the 5 steps that one goes through. And this actually Srila Prabhupada also explains. I can show it to you in this. I hope you are able to see. Yeah. Oh, it looks small in mine, so maybe. So yeah, so this is Srila Prabhupada writing in Chaitanya Charitamrita Adilila, chapter 7, text 106. And he says that the theme of each and every division is fully described in terms of 5 different subject matters, adhikaranas. So he's talking about the structure of Vedanta Sutra. Now Vedanta Sutra is structured in the principles of Nyaya. So when we say 3 prasthanas are there, there is Shruti Prasthan, Smriti Prasthan and Nyaya Prasthan. We Nyaya Prasthan basically means the study of Vedanta Sutra, and Vedanta Sutra is speaking on the conclusions of the Upanishads. But still, it is categorized as Nyaya Prasthan because the study of Upanishads through Vedanta Sutra is done through logic system which has been established by the Nyayikas. So this is a contribution of these other 5 philosophers also. No? If we see that from Nyaya, although they have a different theory, they do not accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead and they have their own system to derive at that conclusion. But the principles which they set forth can be used by the followers of Uttarmimamsa or followers of Vedavyas, those who are studying Vedanta. Similarly, Kapila's Sankhya also, to some extent, not coming to the conclusion that there is no God in control. To some extent, the Sankhya principles, the understanding of the material elements, how they combine, which are all the different elements and all, is actually quite similar to the Sankhya philosophy which Kapila Dev mentions in 3rd canto. So, Acharyas mentioned that there are 26 elements, including the Supreme Lord, and the atheistic Kapila, he explains 25 elements, but the 26th Tattva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he says it's not there, he is not here. So, till the 25th part, it actually correlates, it goes hand in hand with what Sankhya teaches, what this atheistic Kapila teaches in Sankhya philosophy, one of the darshanas. Similarly, Jaimini's Purvamimamsa also, it is used for the understanding of words and analyzing those words. So, Mimamsa itself means how to understand the text, how to understand the Vedic text and their application, that is called as Mimamsa. So, Purvamimamsa, Jaimini goes to a major or large extent to give the procedures and methods through which the Vedic statements can be understood. So, in Vedanta also, that is also called Uttarmimamsa, and to understand Dharma Shastra, to understand the statements of Mahabharata, to understand statements of Itihasas and other Puranas and all, and the Upanishads also, these principles of Mimamsa, which is explained by Jaimini, are being employed. So, we do take some concepts which all these Shad Darshanas, all these 6 darshanas, in fact 5 darshanas, they give. We do not arrive at that conclusion, but we can use it as instruments. And this is also seen in Srila Jiva Goswami's work, and in his Sandarbhas actually, he quotes from different acharyas. He quotes Sankaracharya also to prove his point. He quotes Sridhar Swami also to prove, actually the entire Sandarbha, major of his commentaries is derived from Sridhar Swami's commentary on Bhagavatam. Then of course he takes references from Madhvacharya, from Ramanujacharya, like that. But the interesting part is that he also has studied Shankaracharya's commentary and he actually takes some points or some references that Shankaracharya gives to prove that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of God, to prove our philosophy. So these are instruments or tools, although we completely reject these Shankara's philosophy and other such philosophies, but the tools which they use, we can use that for our purposes also. So Vedanta Sutra uses these Nyaya principles which are expounded by the Nyayikas. And the basic one is these 5 methods. So there is Pratigya. So each adhikarana means each chapter of Vedanta Sutra are divided or are categorized into these Pratigya, Hetu, Udharan, Upanaya and Nigmana. So when a thesis is made, when a concept has to be proved, then this is the structure which is being followed. So Pratigya is a solemn declaration of the purpose of the treatise. The solemn declaration given in the beginning of Vedanta Sutra is Athata Brahma Jigyasa, which indicates that this book was written with a solemn declaration to inquire about the absolute truth. That's the purpose of Vedanta Sutra. Similar reasons must be expressed, Hetu. So whenever certain specific points are being made in Vedanta Sutra, there are reasons given for that from the Upanishads. Examples must be given in terms of various facts. So Udharan, examples are given and general premises are also established, which is Vyapti. The theme must gradually brought nearer for understanding, Upanaya. So then we come to the conclusion part. We bring it, oh, because this is like this, so therefore it suggests that this is the proper understanding. And finally, it must be supported by authoritative quotations from Vedic Shastra, Nigamana or conclusion. Because this is the thesis I am trying to prove, these are the reasons, and this is also supported by other statements from the Vedic literature. So that is your Anuman. So this is what we discussed. There is Pratigya, the claim to be proven. There is a fire on the mountain. Then we have the reason is to observe fact because there is smoke. Vyapti, general principle, and Udharana here is wherever there is smoke, there is fire. So that's Vyapti, general principle. And Udharana, example is that we have seen in the kitchen that when we are lighting fire, smoke arises out of it. Upanaya is application or confirmation of the reason. Smoke is rising from this particular mountain. So that's the application part. So the conclusion is that there is fire on the mountain. So this is how Anuman works. Now coming back to our text, we have discussed this, but then is this always conclusive or is this always perfect in giving us the proper understanding? No, because a tall pillar of smoke may gather on a mountain for some time after rain has extinguished a fire, correct? Or a mountain may appear smoky on its own during the rainy season. So during the rainy season, even here also we can see, when we look at the Year-Card mountains, then you see, it's all covered with mist. And it might seem, if you go a little bit nearer, that there is no smoke, so there might be fire there, but actually there is no fire there, right? So inference or anumana is actually not perfect for giving perfect understanding. Other pramana depend on Pratyaksa and anumana, thus susceptible to failure to provide perfect knowledge. So we also discussed that these three pramanas, Pratyaksa, Anumana and Sabda, they include all the other pramanas also. And if Pratyaksa and Anuman itself can be defective, so other pramanas which are dependent on them or which are special extension of Pratyaksa and Anuman, they also are susceptible to failure. In this way, since these two prominent evidences, Pratyaksa and Anuman, are susceptible to failure, it is well established that the other kinds of evidences dependent on them are also subject to failure. And again, just to bring back the context here, when we are speaking about the failure of these pramanas, we are looking at the topmost prameya. Okay, so these pramanas have their uses, these pramanas are being used for certain things, but our prameya itself is to understand the absolute truth. Our prameya for this particular study is to understand these five tattvas, Ishwar, Jiva, Kala, Karma and Prakriti. So for that, Pratyaksa and Anuman is actually not enough to give us that perfect knowledge. So again, Jiva Goswami continues, he says, furthermore, knowledge derived from sensory perception is inadequate for acquiring spiritual knowledge. Animals and other species have senses just like intelligent humans. We see that animals and other ignorant forms of life accept and reject what is desirable and undesirable by seeing, smelling and so on. These creatures, however, achieve nothing spiritual. We also see that very young children can acquire all sorts of knowledge simply from the reliable word of their mothers, fathers and so on. Whereas children kept in seclusion without being told anything become dull and speechless and fail to achieve anything practical. Correct. So children have only this senses, they have senses and they are sense objects and they can derive some information about it. But then if they are not taught by the parents, by the elders, then if they are not told anything, then they become dull and speechless. And these are examples in the world also, who when children have not been exposed to proper Shabda, then they actually become dull. So therefore Pratyaksa and Anumana actually is not sufficient to give perfect knowledge. And if we see this, we can also extend it that in fact all the knowledge that we gain in this world, it's through Sabda Pramana only. Right from the child when he is born, or the baby when it's born, it learns so many things. It has its senses, sense perceptions that gain some knowledge, but actually how to use it, how to play with something, how to use it, which is beneficial for it, which is not beneficial for the child, all those things are being taught by the parents. And when the child goes to Gurukula or child goes to school, and he hears from the teachers. Even if is going to the mundane school, then he's learning from the teachers only, right? So that is Shabda Pramana. So anything that the child learns throughout its entire student years, it's actually learning. The child is learning, he is learning from his teacher. So that is also Shabda Pramana. And only after he learns all those things, then he'll be able to do the application part of it. And if he does not learn from a teacher, if Shabda Pramana is not being taught only through Pratyaksa, he will not be able to gain knowledge. And because Pratyaksa itself is very limited, his application of this knowledge in Anumana Pramana also will be very, very defective. Because Anumana Pramana, there should be a general experience, no? There should be a base of knowledge which can be then applied logically in another situations. But then if he has gained knowledge only to Pratyaksha Pramana, he does not have perfect knowledge, even of material things. So how is it possible for him to apply the Anumana Pramana in his life? It is not possible. So everything that one learns is through Shabda Pramana only. Right? So therefore, Shabda Pramana is superior, and because it has 6 qualities. On the other hand, verbal testimony characterized by authoritative statements never fails. Example of this are sentences such as, there is snow in the Himalayas, jewels are found in mines, fire is produced by the contact of the sunstone, Ravikanta, with the rays of the sun, etc. So, when this Shabda is being spoken by a authority, then it becomes authoritative. So, example of this are sentences such as, there is snow in the Himalayas. Now, many of us may not have gone to the Himalayan mountains, but we would have heard someone who has gone to Himalayan mountains or someone who has learned from an authority that there is snow that is to be found even in the Himalayan mountains. So, we accept that, correct? And of course, we have seen photographs. So, then Pratyaksha is actually supporting the statement that there is snow that is found in the Himalayas. Similarly, jewels are found in mines. So, in mines, when you dig into the earth, then jewels are found or gold is found. Fire is produced by the contact of the sunstone, Ravikanta, with the rays of the sun. So, it's a stone called as Ravikanta, through which fire can be produced. And this we can see also, like if we use a magnifying glass and we focus the sun's rays on a piece of paper, then the paper catches fire. I used to play like that when we were small, using this glass. It's a similar concept. If someone tells us this, then we accept it. Okay, so that is Shabda Pramana. It's coming from an authority, and by doing the proper experimentation, we will be able to find that this is correct. So there is snow in the Himalayas, although we may not have gone to the Himalayan mountains. If we hear, then this is perfect knowledge, because actually there is snow in the Himalayas. Jewels are found in the mines. Now, we may not have seen these mines Pratyaksha directly, but then it is known that these jewels are actually found in the mines only, and fire produced by the contact of the sunstone with rays of the sun, then fire is also produced. So verbal testimony is categorized by authoritative statements and it never fails. Now again here, verbal testimony which is not characterized by authoritative statements, they are bound to fail. Okay, so this is the viparit, or this is the opposite of that. Shabda Pramana, which is not coming, or Shabda, I'll not even say Pramana, Shabda which is coming from an inauthoritative source should not be considered as perfect source of knowledge. Okay, so when there might be someone who wants to cheat us, or there might be someone who wants to tell lies, or there is someone who himself is speculating something and then he gives us that knowledge, that is Shabda Pramana only, because he is speaking to us and we are gaining knowledge through whatever he is speaking. But then that speech is not authoritative, because there is a tendency to cheat there. So that is why this whole principle of parampara or disciplic succession becomes very important, because if the guru is not coming in disciplic succession, then the words that he speaks actually will not be authoritative. It cannot be considered as the absolute truth. So parampara is actually very important if we have to make progress in spiritual life. And there are so many other so-called gurus also who actually are not coming in any type of parampara, but then they claim that they got enlightened by just meditation. There are so many, there's I'm not getting names, but okay, all this art of living, then this Isha Foundation, what they say is that they went to a top of a mountain, before sunrise and they were intensely meditating on the sun or something. Then gradually they were able to, something happened and they suddenly got lots of knowledge and they realized that this is how life is to be led, this is what the actual absolute truth is, this, that and all. And then when they realized that in 4 or 5 hours, then after that they came down, and because of this new enlightenment, they wanted to share it with others. And then they come up with all these different concepts, different organizations, this, that and all. And they say, this is how life is to be led, this is what the philosophy is, this is the ultimate way to peace and happiness, and so on. This is how they started. This is how they started. This is how all this came through. And that is why it's complete speculation. And because they have not gained their knowledge through parampara, whatever they say is only useless. People do not get any benefit out of it. And people are fool enough to understand that, or rather, they do not understand that they are not getting a benefit out of it. Anyways, verbal testimony is known as independent from both direct perception and inference. So these are the characteristics of Shabda Pramana. So verbal testimony of Shabda Pramana is known as independent from both direct perception and inference. So Shabda itself is independent. It is not dependent on the support of direct perception and inference. It is not dependent on the support of Pratyaksa and anumana pramana to prove that it is right. Shabda Pramana is independent on its own. Correct. Now, the knowledge which is gained from Shabda Pramana may or may not be supported by direct perception or inference. It may or may not be supported by Pratyaksa or Anuman, but the Shabda itself is not dependent on the Pratyaksa and Anuman Pramanas. So we cannot say, oh, this is Shabda Pramana, but then if I say this, it is not working. No, it's Shabda Pramana. If it's coming from authoritative statements, from proper authorities, it should be accepted as authoritative. Direct perception and inference are inherently besotted with so many issues and mistakes. This Brahma, Pramada, Vipralipsa and Karanapata actually have a direct influence on Pratyaksa and Anuman. So Pratyaksa and Anuman cannot be used to prove Shabda Pramana. Shabda Pramana is self-evident. It is there and it is perfect. Direct perception, or rather Pratyaksa and Anuman, can be used to support the Shabda Pramana, but they do not actually prove Shabda Pramana. Okay. So, for an example, Srila Prabhupada gives his example in the introduction to Ishopanishad. He says that normally the bone of an animal is considered contaminated, but then conch shell is a bone of a living entity, but then it is kept in the altar room because it is considered to be very pure. Now, this is Shabda Pramana. Now, with respect to Pratyaksa and Anuman, we will not be able to understand how it is so. Correct? But because it's Shabda Pramana, it is used in that way. So, that is to be accepted. And another example he gives is that of cow dung, cow urine. Cow urine has antiseptic property. He says that they are pure. They are used as purifying agents. Although the urine and stool of any other animal is considered to be completely contaminating, but the urine and stool of cow is to be considered as purifying agent. Now, this is Shabda Pramana. Now, this Shabda Pramana, if we tell to somebody, normally the understanding of a sane human being is that urine and stool of an animal is actually contaminating. It's smelly, it's contaminated, it should not be come in contact with. So, Pratyaksha Pramana here will not work, and Anuman Pramana also here will not work. But then, it is also, Prabhupada also writes that now the scientists have found out some antiseptic properties in this cow dung and cow urine. So therefore, the Shabda which is saying that cow dung and cow urine is a purifying agent, and it should be used for purifying purposes, it is proved. So now here what happens, the direct perception, Pratyaksha and Anuman is actually supporting the Shabda Pramana, but the Shabda Pramana itself is independent from Pratyaksha and Anuman. It is not dependent on the Pratyaksha and Anuman to prove it. It is completely independent. Right? Then as overruling both. Overruling both means if Pratyaksha is giving us, saying something, or we are gaining knowledge of Pratyaksha, through Pratyaksha about something, and through logic also if we are gaining some knowledge about it, then the Shabda Pramana actually overrules both of them. Okay, apparently it might not be possible for us to understand, oh, this is how it is, and this is through logic also I can understand this is how it works, but then Shabda Pramana actually overrules both of them. We will see examples of each of these, just the principles are mentioned here, as not being contradicted by either. So direct Pratyaksha and Anuman, they cannot contradict the Shabda Pramana. So there might be mistakes in understanding through Pratyaksa and Anuman, but that does not mean that they are actually contradicting what is given in the Sabda pramana. So that is also has to be understood. As being assisted by both, so when the Sabda pramana is there, Pratyaksa pramana can assist it in the sense that it can show that what is told in the Sabda is correct. Using logic, it can be shown that what is there in the Sabda is actually correct. So they can be the assistants of Sabda pramana. As furthering both, we will see example of that, so that will make it more clear. As being the most effective means to know what is not comprehended by either. So that which cannot be understood by both direct perception and inference can be understood through Sabda pramana. So we'll see the examples of each of these. So example of Sabda's relation with Pratyaksha and Anuman pramana. So for instance, in sentences like you are the 10th one, verbal testimony is independent from direct perception and inference. Entering one's ear, verbal testimony removes the confusion that covered the understanding that I am the 10th one. Therefore, this fact is clear. Now, what is this 10th one? So there are two stories. Two stories which are mentioned in different works of different people. So there are a set of people, there were 10 people who crossed the river. Okay, and the river was flowing very swiftly. So they were not very sure whether they will be able to cross the river without losing somebody. So but somehow they swimmed and they crossed the river. So now after crossing the river, now they wanted to count whether all of us are here or not. So then the person started to count. Okay, but then what he was doing, he was counting everybody else, but he was not counting himself. So he said, oh, there are only 9. Then the other person says, hey, you are not counting properly, so let me count. And then the other person started to count. And he made the same mistake. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Where is the 10th one? I think we lost somebody. So similarly, it was going around. Each person was trying to count, but they were missing himself. They were not counting themselves. They were counting everybody else. So one person was going by and he said, oh, what are you doing? I see each one of you counting, but then after counting gets so agitated. What exactly is happening? So they said, we started 10. We were 10 of us who started crossing the river. But now when we are counting only 9. I think we lost somebody. So then he counts. He said 1, 2, 3, 4. And he said, all of you are here. The problem here was that you were not counting yourself. So that is why you are counting only 9, but actually you are 10 people here. So now it looks a very, very different kind of example. But then the person who actually tells them that, oh, there are 10, you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Through his Sabda pramana, it is proved that there are 10 people and they have not lost anybody. Correct. And this is another example also that I think it's there in the footnote. Yeah. Said one oft-told story. A teacher asked his student, how many people do you see here? The disciple seeing his teacher and 8 others answered 9. So then the teacher said, no, 10 people are here and you are the 10th. So this is Sabda pramana. He is basically clarifying what the person is not able to understand through only seeing. See, Pratyaksha means what he is seeing. So what he is seeing? He is seeing only 9 people. He is not able to see the 10th person because he is not seeing himself. Although he can see his hands and body and all, but still, he is not able to recognize that he is the 10th one. Right? He is not able to see him as a person there. So Pratyaksha does not work. This is the statement that Acharyas give. Therefore, when another person comes and tells, oh, you are also human being, you should count yourself also, therefore you are the 10th. So then, direct perception and inference where it does not work, that Sabda works. Okay. Now, a better example is given in Tattva Sandarbha. So that is, my son, you were in my womb in the city of Mathura. So this is a mother speaking to his child. So she says, you are my son and you were in my womb in the city of Mathura. Now, can the child find out through direct perception about this? No. Can he use his logic to understand this? No. He only has to accept the mother's word, saying, oh, I was inside you when you were in Mathura. So that's it, proved. Correct? So this is Sabda pramana. So Sabda pramana is completely independent from direct perception and inference. This cannot be proved. No. If the mother says that you were in my womb in the city of Mathura, he cannot prove it, or there is no other way that he can use that, or he can get this knowledge through direct perception or through inference. Pratyaksha Anuman will not work here. So therefore, this is for the example for the first point, that is that Sabda is independent from both direct perception and inference. The next one is that it overrules both. Now, there are examples of overruling. Sabda overruling Pratyaksha and Anuman. So there is this mantra, Sarpa dashte tvai visham nasti. There is no poison within you who have been bitten by a serpent. Explanation comes. A victim of snake bite may still feel the pain of poison even after his curer has dispelled the power of the poison by chanting the proper mantra and has assured the victim the poison is leaving you. Despite the victim's doubt, however, the effective mantra will cure him. Or, for those who do not believe in such mantras, a more suitable example may be that of a medical doctor's assurance to a patient that the antidote being administered will cure him. In such cases, the mantra doctor and the medical doctor both have the power to authoritatively predict the cure. Now, this person who has been bitten by a serpent, he can see the marks of the serpent's fangs are still there in his body. So he may see, oh, it is still there, maybe I am not cured. And the effect of the poison has not completely gone out of his body also. So he might still feel that, oh, logically speaking, it looks like the poison is still there because I am able to feel the symptoms. I am able to feel dizzy, I am feeling dizzy, I am feeling very weak, this, that and all. But then the doctor or the one who is chanting mantras to remove the poison of that serpent, he says, no, the poison has been removed and you will come over of it soon. So according to direct perception, he still thinks that there is poison in his system. According to logic also, because he is feeling the symptoms, he still thinks there is poison in the system. But according to the doctor, one who is chanting mantras to remove the poison, or even a medical doctor, according to him, the poison has already been removed. So here his Shabda or his authoritativeness in this particular subject matter supersedes or overrules what the patient experiences in terms of his Pratyaksha and Anuman. Correct? So Shabda actually can be overruled. Sorry, Pratyaksha and inference can be overruled by Shabda. So this example that is given for that purpose. Another one is Vahni taptam angam vahni tapena shamyati. A limb burnt by fire is relieved by the heat of fire. Now in Ayurvedic system, a limb which is burnt by fire can be relieved by the heat of fire. So if there is burning, if there is burning sensation is there, so initially it might be treated with something which is cold, but then when we have some hot pack or something, then it kind of tries to heal faster. And another way also is that in medical treatments, when the skin has been burnt or when there is some damage in the skin, then laser rays are being, laser surgeries are being used to regenerate new tissues, to regenerate the problem with that particular skin. So there are laser treatments also. And you can see, laser is also kind of, it has the properties of fire, right? It heats up things. So that is how it is. So although, it does not make sense, logically speaking, that fire can be cured through fire, but then it is actually possible. In Ayurvedic system, it is there where the fire, a limb which is burned by fire can be relieved by the heat of fire. So therefore, Pratyaksha and Anuman is being overruled. So the first example is of Pratyaksha primarily. The second example is for Anuman primarily. So both of them have been overruled by the Shabda Pramana. Examples that something established by verbal testimony is not contradicted by direct perception and inference are respectively Suvarnam Bhasitam Snigdham. Gold turned into powder becomes greasy. Okay. Gold and other precious metals and gems ground into powder and further processed are used therapeutically in Ayurvedic medicine. We have no empiric way of knowing that gold powder in Ayurvedic mixtures becomes oily when digested, but Ayurvedic texts affirms this. Okay, so gold is actually also used for weight gain. So if someone has to gain weight, if he is very weak and he has to gain immunity, he has to gain weight, then gold is administered. Not like one starts eating gold biscuits. That's not the point. In very grounded, very fine, very less amount of gold is being given and it turns into oil, it turns into fat or grease. Now this is Shabda Pramana, that gold turns into, gold turned into powder becomes greasy when it is being digested. There is no way for us to identify that this is the principle through Pratyaksha or Anuman, but then when he is administered this particular treatment or this particular medicine which includes this gold, then he can see over a period of time that he is becoming healthy and he is also gaining weight. Correct? So this pramana, this Shabda Pramana is actually not contradicted or it is not opposed by direct perception or inference, because he could see that actually his weight is being gained because of the administration of this gold, which is turned into powder. It turns into greasy. So now powdered gold is an ingredient in Ayurvedic medicines prescribed for debility, anemia and other conditions in which weight gain is desirable. Ayurvedic texts describe that gold turns into bodily mass, and such a result can be observed by those who follow the treatment. Correct? The next example is that ekam evaushadham tri doshagnam. A single medicine destroys 3 doshas, kapha, pitta and vayu. So in Ayurveda, again, the problems in one's body is identified based upon the balance of these 3 dhatus, kapha, pitta and vayu. So when these 3 dhatus become imbalanced, then there are problems within the body with respect to vayu, with respect to bone problems are primarily because of vayu. Then this breathing problems are because of vayu and kapha also. So when there's an imbalance of these 3 doshas in the body, then there are problems which appear in the body. And a single medicine is administered, or single medicine can itself balance these 3 doshas. Now again, when the medicine is being given, now through Pratyaksa and anumana, it is not possible to understand how it is going to cure me. But as days go by and the medicine is administered, then it is understood that the doshas actually are balanced. So it is applicable to modern medicine also. Through Pratyaksa, when we are taking this paracetamol or some other tablet for fever or something, based on experience, we can say that actually will cure me, but just through Pratyaksa will not be able to understand how this particular tablet, when it goes inside the body, actually cures me. Correct? So it has to be understood through Sabda pramana, or Sabda pramana also acts as a supporting factor or as the base for anumana pramana. This we have already discussed. So once Sabda pramana proves that, oh, this is how it is, if we take this particular medicine, then it will cure me, then it becomes an experience for us. It's a vyapti for us now. So the next time we get into a fever, we can use our logic. Oh, because I'm running temperature, I have this fever, therefore if I take this particular tablet, I'll be able to cure myself. So then anumana pramana can be established there. But then first of all, the knowledge has to be gained through Sabda pramana only. Correct? So therefore, this Pratyaksa and inference actually do not contradict what is given by this Sabda. And the extension of this is assisting. So this Pratyaksa and anumana actually assist the verbal testimony according to their capacity. This is the example. Agnir himasya bheshajam. Fire is the remedy against cold. Now the authoritative statement that fire melts ice is valid whether it convinces the hearer or not. But actually seeing fire melt ice certainly helps support the statement. Correct? So this is Agnir Himasya Bheshajam. Now these verses, these texts are actually to be found in the Vedic literatures. The references are not given here. But either they are traditionally being used, or they are being found in the Vedic literature. So these are Shruti statements, Shabda pramanas. And these Shabda pramanas are being assisted by the Pratyaksa and Anuman. Okay, this is what it is. Now another example, now this is for Pratyaksa, because we are Pratyaksa, we are seeing directly that fire melts ice. So fire is the remedy against cold. One who has got cold, then if he surrounds himself with fire, he will not experience that cold. Now those who have not seen the particular properties of a diamond may infer that all substances like stones can be cut by iron, since they come from earth. Okay. So now, here the inference, or first, the case of inference is given here. What is written here is that stones can be cut by iron. Okay, and the person has seen that the stones can be cut by iron, and he has inferred that because stones can be cut by iron, so therefore all stones can be cut by iron. Okay, so this is knowledge. But when it comes to diamond, actually diamonds cannot be cut by an iron saw. It is not possible. Diamonds are very hard. So through inference, he will not be able to gain that knowledge that diamonds cannot be cut by iron. Okay, he has to learn that knowledge through Sabda pramana, and then when he sees it, Pratyaksa, that iron is actually not able to cut the diamond, and that diamonds are actually used to cut very hard stones, then he gains that knowledge. So why this example is given here is because now Sabda pramana, there are two Sabdas or two pramanas which are being used. One is that stone can be cut by iron. So that is being supported by this inference that all stones can be cut by iron. So it is assisting the Shabda in that manner. But then cannot be applied to all the circumstances, because we also see that diamonds actually cannot be cut by iron. So Shabda Pramana here supersedes what is inferred through logic, correct? So both are there. So inference or logic, or let's say anuman, can support the Shabda to some extent, but then beyond a certain point it will not be able to support. Logic will not work in this particular case. So Jiva Goswami, he explains this particular concept in his Sarva Samadhini Tattva Sandarbha. He says inference can assist verbal knowledge, but only as far as it is able. For example, those who have not observed the special qualities of a diamond may reason that all stones and other objects can be cut by iron because they are products of the element earth. Those, however, who have heard verbal testimony about the qualities of diamond understand that iron cannot cut it. Apart from the formal difficulties in ensuring the reasons supporting an inference are valid, the authority of Anuman itself has yet another limitation. This is another thing. Such an inference must always begin with premises derived originally from direct perception. And so, because sensory perception is never absolutely certain, knowledge derived from logic is always imperfect. So, the experience that one gets through direct perception and using that experience to come to a logical conclusion is always imperfect, because the senses are imperfect, because Pratyaksa is imperfect. Right? So this is just an expansion of the concept that we have already discussed. Examples that direct perception and inference are firmly established or furthered by verbal testimony are as follows. A person who has seen an illusory head moving may, by mistake, not believe when seeing a real one, but will believe it upon hearing a voice from the sky stating, "This is the head of such and such." Now, we saw this example that there is an illusory head of Yagyadatta's. The person who is seeing that head, he may think that it's the head of Yagyadatta, but he will not be sure. But then it may be possible that in that darkness, although he is able to see a head, he is not sure whether it's really the head of that person or it's really the form of that person or not. But if that person himself calls out that, "Oh, hey, I am here, I am Yagyadatta only standing here," then that Shabda basically confirms that that person whom he is seeing is actually not an illusory person, but he is the person himself. Correct? Through Pratyaksa, he will not be able to know. Anuman is not even applicable here. But if a Shabda comes, then he will be able to understand. If the person tells that, "Oh, Yagyadatta, your son is standing under that tree." Now, for that person, in far off distance, in that darkness, it might look as his son, but it might be illusory also, because maybe some branches are hanging down from that tree, which might have taken the shape of his son. But then when the son calls out to him, or when his mother calls out from a different, that your son is standing under that particular tree, then that Shabda actually works out for him, right? He is able to get perfect knowledge that the son is actually under that tree. So, now when Shabda actually supports the Pratyaksa here, then that is called as furthering of verbal testimony, or furthering of the Pratyaksa and Anuman by verbal testimony. Now, Jiva Goswami writes in this particular case that suppose one has been deluded by seeing a person's false head and may not believe in that person's real head. Even if he then hears a voice in the sky say, "This head is real," all who know the methods of logic will confirm that without respectfully approaching his elders, he cannot correctly ascertain any truth. Correct? So going to an authority, or when a Shabda Pramana is made there, that this is that person, then you can understand it. Okay, so this particular comment we will skip, because we are going to discuss that in next references also. Another example of this is when someone says, "O travelers afflicted by cold, do not think that there may be fire on this hill. I have seen that the fire has just now been extinguished by the rain, yet there is fire on that hill emitting smoke." Right? So on this particular fire, where you think there is smoke, there must be fire. Actually, there is no fire because it has been extinguished by rain. But then there is another mountain. That mountain which you see, actually there is fire on top of that hill because it is emitting smoke. Now, one who is an authority on that matter, if he has seen both the mountains, he will be able to give this particular understanding. Right? Examples that verbal testimony is most efficient means to that which cannot be comprehended by direct perception and inference is found in understanding the movements of the planets through the zodiac signs, the solar eclipses, and so on. So that which cannot be understood in any manner through Pratyaksa and Anuman, that can be understood through verbal testimony. The position of celestial bodies related to the earth are calculable by anyone who knows the relevant mathematical formulas. But most astronomical observers prefer to locate the celestial bodies by using book of tables in which the calculations have already been made. In that case, Shabda Pramana is more effective than retracing the steps of perception and inference. So these calculations are given in texts, in astronomical texts like this Surya Siddhanta and others. So if one follows those calculations, actually he can calculate the movement of the planets, and he can actually predict that this particular planet will be in this particular position, it will be in this nakshatra, it will be in this Rashi after 100 years. After 100 years, Guru will be in this particular lagna at this particular time, it will be in this particular Rashi, and the moon will be conjoined with Guru. Like that, no? All these things can be known just by the calculations which are already given in the texts like Surya Siddhanta. So there, Pratyaksa and anumana will not work. You just have to follow the authorities, do the calculation, and then you will be able to know. So that's why, even in astrological softwares and all, what they do is basically all these tables are actually coded in them. And when you enter your birth date, your place and time, then based on that, it does the calculation of all the planetary movements. So no Pratyaksha Anuman is required here. The calculations are already given, and these calculations are based on the authorities who have studied or who have learnt this movement of planets through Shabda Pramana in disciplic succession. Okay. So in this way, being established that verbal testimony is superior to all other kinds of evidence, the verbal testimony that determines the truth is the Shruti only, and not even the words of sages as it is stated in the Shruti itself. Navedavin manute tam brihantam. One who does not know the Vedas does not know the Supreme. And Upanishadam Purusham Prichhami. I am asking you about the Supreme Person taught in the Upanishads. So now we come to the final conclusion. So our study of all these Pratyakshas, Prataksha, Anuman, different kinds of pramanas is coming to a conclusion here. So here, Shabda Pramana, Shri Radha Damodar Goswami is saying that this refers to the Vedas or the Shruti only. Now this might seem like a jump. Like, how is it? We are discussing all the pramanas and all, but now we are finally concluding that the Vedas are the perfect pramana. So why we should accept Vedas as the perfect pramana? Why not anything else? So the answer to this question is that this analysis has already been done in the past. There are 10 types of knowledge, 10 ways in which these pramanas through which knowledge can be gained, and of these 10 ways, till now it has been proved that Shabda Pramana is perfect. And of the Shabda Pramana also, what we are saying, the hypothesis or the axiom that we are putting forward is that the Vedic Pramana is the perfect Pramana. So now I have the responsibility to say why the Vedic Pramana is the perfect Pramana. Correct? So now Jiva Goswami in his Sarva Samadhini on text 10 actually qualifies what Shabda Pramana actually is, and how apart from the Vedic literatures, none of the other Shabda Pramanas actually qualify to be the perfect authority to gain knowledge about the absolute truth. Again, bringing back the context, we are doing this study to know the pramayas, to have perfect understanding of the Vedanta philosophy, to have perfect understanding of the supreme absolute truth, about the different tattvas, Jiva, Ishvara, Kala, Karma and so on. So for that, Vedic literatures are only the proper authority. Other Shabdas are actually not proper. So I'll just read what Sri Jiva Goswami says here. In this way, we can conclude that verbal testimony Shabda is the only certain means for acquiring valid knowledge. And having thus concluded, we should consider precisely what this Shabda is. So according to Sri Jiva Goswami's explanation of Shabda Pramana, he says, to define Shabda as language free from faults like delusion will not suffice. That definition is inadequate because everyone thinks his own opinion free from delusion and the other such faults, and that leaves us no way to ascertain the relative value of differing opinions. One cannot just claim that because, I am free from delusion, therefore my Shabda is perfect. There should be something else also. There should be some other parameters to this particular definition. Another reason this definition is inadequate is that it would make verbal testimony, which of necessity is acquired through the senses, dependent on another means of knowing, and this would divest verbal testimony of its authority. Now, this is an important point. Okay. So what he's saying here is that to get Shabda Pramana also, the only way we can learn Shabda Pramana is through our ears. Right? And we have been saying that Pratyaksha means gaining knowledge through our 5 knowledge acquiring senses. Through our eyes, through our nose, through mouth, taste, through our skin, and through hearing. Right? So, do we say that Pratyaksha pramana, or rather Shabda pramana, is actually dependent on Pratyaksha pramana here? No. Logically it makes sense. Anumana pramana, logically it makes sense, right? Because Shabda has to be heard through ears only. And we know the senses are imperfect, the ears are imperfect also. So, how can we gain perfect knowledge if we have to learn through our ears? So, now we come to this, this subtle understanding of what actually pramanas are. Now, pramana, when we speak of pramana, we are actually speaking about the source of that knowledge. We are not speaking about the actual instrument which is being used. Although pramana itself is defined as the instrumental cause of valid knowledge, we are actually looking at the cause. Okay, so the cause or the source of knowledge actually determines whether that particular knowledge is perfect or not. When we speak about Pratyaksha, we are speaking about knowledge which we derive from our senses. So the source of our knowledge is basically the interaction of our senses with the sense objects. That is the source of our knowledge. Anuman pramana, the source is our own intellect and mind, depending upon the experiences that we had. But Shabda pramana, the source is actually not our ear. The source comes from an authoritative person. So the authority is the source. Okay, the authority is the source, and when from that source we get knowledge using our ears, that knowledge becomes perfect. Okay, so we have to see what actually is the source of knowledge. So when we are discussing all these pramanas, we are basically looking at the source of gaining knowledge, the instrumental cause. That's why it's not only instrument for gaining valid knowledge, it's instrumental cause of gaining valid knowledge. Because what is the cause? What is the source? So which source am I gaining that knowledge? Now, if the knowledge, although it is gained through ears, but still because the source of that knowledge is perfect, therefore we can get perfect knowledge. So that is proper or perfect understanding. Now, in this particular case, Sabda is defined as language free from faults like delusion, and if verbal testimony, which is of necessity, is acquired through the senses, because we are using our ears to get the verbal testimony of Shabda pramana, dependent on another means of knowing, and this would divest verbal testimony of its authority. So Shabda pramana has to be defined such that the source of that Shabda is defined properly. So Shabda is not only the language which is free from false like delusion, we also have to determine what is the source of that Shabda. So only when the source of that Shabda is determined, then only we can be sure that we are going to get perfect knowledge. So the source has to be determined, correct? So now Sri Jiva Gosvami defines what actual Shabda means. He says Shabda we mean to indicate here is that which everyone studies to become learned, and by which anyone upon understanding it can become learned in all subjects. It imparts the ultimate wisdom that purifies sensory perception and the other means of knowing. It is a Shabda self-manifest since time immemorial. So these are the qualifications or characteristics of the Shabda that we are speaking of. One who studies it, he studies it to become learned. So he becomes learned about material aspects as well as spiritual aspects. Upon understanding it, he becomes learned in all subjects. So Shabda should be that through which one can gain material knowledge as well as spiritual knowledge. So he becomes learned in all subjects. And one who studies it, he becomes learned, he becomes a Pandita. Then it imparts the ultimate wisdom. Another characteristic of the Shabda is that it should be able to purify my sensory perception. Correct? Purification of sensory perception means that when I see something, using that knowledge, I'll be able to understand what actually it means. Just a very fast example is when someone comes and sees the deities, now he will see only a murti which is being made. He may not be able to understand it's the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. Correct? So for that, knowledge is required. Although through eyes, he will be able to see a pratima in front of him, but then he will not be able to recognize that Supreme Lord himself, and he will not be able to reciprocate with the deity. So therefore, it purifies sensory perception in that way. So Shabda should have that quality, and it is a Shabda which is self-manifest since time immemorial, and it should be self-manifest, or in other words, it should be Swata Siddha, or it should be Apaurushaya. It should not be created by someone who is a human being, because human beings have necessarily these four faults, and by their own speculation they cannot create perfect knowledge. They cannot propagate, or they cannot be the source of perfect Shabda. And it should be time immemorial, because if it is created at certain point of time, which necessarily means that it is not applicable before that. Correct? And this brings us to the point of other religions. All the scriptures, in Christianity, Bible, Quran, all they are created at a certain point of time. So they cannot be accepted as perfect Shabda Pramana. Okay, although it is claimed that it is given as the word of God, this, that and all, especially if you see in Christianity, it was actually written by the so-called followers of Jesus Christ. I don't know so-called followers, but these principles which were there in the Bible was actually written by his followers after 50 to 60 years after Jesus Christ has already left this world. So now what happened during that time? Because 50, 60 years is not small time. It's a long time in terms of reproducing actual history properly. So because it comes at a certain point of time, before that there was no Christianity, before that there was no Islam, so therefore the concepts which are explained there cannot be accepted as perfect or perfect Shabda Pramana. Now there can be question there also, but anyway, we'll get to this, we'll have to complete this. This is a total corpus of authoritative statements. The statements in Shabda should be authoritative, and it is the basis of all traditional knowledge. So the only thing, the only Shabda which is capable of accommodating all these different characteristics is the revealed scripture known as the Vedas. The eternally manifest verbal expression that has no human author and that appears with no beginning in time from the cause of all, the personality of Godhead. It appears from him again and again and at the beginning of each cycle of creation. The Vedas are the infallible means for correct knowledge, and it is by the mercy of the Supreme Lord that some people accept them. Correct? So this is an axiom. So this is called as an axiom. Now logically or philosophically, using different statements, different examples and so many other things, we have established that Shabda Pramana is perfect. And so Jiva Gosvami also explains what should be Shabda Pramana. Shabda Pramana should have these characteristics to ensure that the knowledge that we gain from the Pramana is perfect. And now the axiom which is being made here is that the revealed scripture known as the Vedas are actually the perfect Pramana for us. And whatever we are supposed to understood, we are supposed to understand or take knowledge from the Vedic literatures only. So this is our axiom. Now, and this axiom is supported by the analysis that we have done till now. So there are no other sources of knowledge which actually fulfills these characteristics. So therefore, we have to accept the Vedas only as perfect source of knowledge. Now, if we see, such axioms or assumptions are also required to be made to gain knowledge for anything. Okay, or accomplish anything. For example, in science also there are different assumptions which they make to do the study of nature and to understand what is their assumptions of science. They are called axioms of science. So one axiom that they make very prominently is that whatever has to be understood can be understood through our senses itself. Okay, so this is an axiom. So, okay, there are 3-4 axioms which they make. The world is real. They say that the world is real and therefore we can study the world and we can understand it. Natural processes are sufficient to explain or account for natural phenomena or events. So whatever happens around us can be understood through natural explanations itself. This is also one of the reasons why these scientific people will not have any faith in ghosts, in something which they cannot explain through their scientific methods. They will not have any tangibility. They will say, oh, ghosts do not exist, this is not, they do not have faith on spirits. They cannot understand what the soul is because it is not perceivable through the senses. It is not perceivable through the natural phenomena which can be acquired through their senses itself. And by the nature of human mental processing rooted in previous experiences or perceptions may be inaccurate or biased. But they do understand that the senses are limited, so there might be cases where our perceptions are actually limited. But with repeated experiments and with repeated expansion of knowledge, we still will be able to understand whatever has to be understood, or all the perfect knowledge we can gain through our senses itself. So it's like an audacity. Although my senses are imperfect, but I'll keep on using my senses to gain more and more knowledge, and through that I'll be able to gain perfect knowledge. So this is their axioms. This is what. So what they say is, through my Pratyaksa and through my anuman, I can basically understand everything that is to be understood in this world. So they have this axiom. So that's why they do not go beyond it. Similarly, we also have this axiom that whatever has to be gained should be gained through the Vedic literatures only. Now, how can we understand whether it's perfect or not? So Krsna gives an answer to that. In the 9th chapter, 2nd verse, he says, Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam Pavitram idam uttamam Pratyakshaavagamam dharmyam Susukham kartum avayam. So he says this knowledge, and this like again superseding verse it speaks about the ultimate knowledge of the Vedic literatures. He says, Raja Vidya, this is the king of all knowledge, this is perfect knowledge. Raja Guhyam, it's very, very confidential, so you cannot attain it through any of the other pramanas. You cannot attain it through your speculation, or there is no other way to attain it but through Shabda Pramana only. Raja Vidya, Raja Guhyam, Pavitram. Right? We saw Jiva Gosvami, it purifies us. Pavitram, Idam Uttamam, and it is the perfect transcendental knowledge. And what happens when you gain this knowledge and act according to that knowledge? Pratyakshavagamam dharmam. So you actually realize that this knowledge is working. You realize that you have gained transcendental knowledge. You become learned in all subjects. You know, Raja Vidya, Raja Guhyam, you learn that it's a confidential knowledge. You understand that by following the processes which are given in the Vedic scriptures, actually I become purified. So at Pratyaksha you can see, actually you can, this is called Vaidusha Pratyaksha. Our acharyas they explain this as Vaidusha Pratyaksha, which means that this Pratyaksha is perfect Pratyaksha and it gives you realization. Pratyakshavagamam dharmyam and susukham kartam avyam, and it is very joyfully performed. So when we are performing also, it's joyfully performed, and when we experience or when we reach to the ultimate destination also, we become ultimately happy. So now going back to what all we have discussed till now, when we are discussing about the Shad Darshanas, all the Shad Darshanas are there only to, or they are explained in such a way so that the miseries can be mitigated and happiness can be increased, correct? So the basic instinct of all living entities is to remove their miseries and to increase happiness. So when we are speaking about the pramaya, that we have to reach the supreme absolute truth, and we have to understand what these different tattvas are, what are the explanations of the Upanishads, the Vedantas and all. The driving factor is basically to attain bliss or brahmananda or happiness, ultimate happiness. So when the Vedic literatures are being used as the Shabda Pramana, and then we act or we prosecute the principles which are given in the Vedic literatures, then we ourselves realize that we actually become happy. So that itself is the pramana, that itself is the evidence for us that the Vedic pramanas actually work, correct? And also this has been experienced by so many great sages in the past. Vitaraga bhayakroda manmaya mamapashataha bahavo jnana tapasa puta madbhava magataha bahavo jnana tapasa. All these people, great sages, they have learned or they have experienced all this bliss by following the Vedic scriptures. So therefore it also gives us the impetus that we should also follow it, and then we should bring ourselves up in purifying our senses and then finally attaining the supreme absolute truth. So just like when a scientific experiment has to be performed, one should have faith in that experiment, and only when he has faith and he performs that experiment, then he'll be able to know that the conclusion which is actually said in the procedure of the experiment is being attained. Correct? So similarly, it's the same experimental process, and this is one of the reasons why Srila Prabhupada also always said, he did not say that it's a faith-based Krishna consciousness movement, it's belief-based Krishna consciousness movement. He always uses the word science of Krishna consciousness. Correct? It's a science because it is practically perceivable. We are soul, we are living entity, and our nature is to be happy. And you follow the Vedic process, we follow the process of Krishna consciousness, we will attain that happiness, that purification will happen. We will become closer to the Supreme Lord. We will be able to understand the absolute truth. So therefore it's a science. And just like in material science also, there is a hypothesis and there is experimentation, and then only there is conclusion of the facts. So without any faith in the experimental process, one cannot perform that experiment. Correct? In the mundane scientific process also. So same way, that particular procedure is also applicable here. Unless and until one follows the Vedic scriptures, the Vedic culture, the process of Krishna consciousness, he will not be able to understand how the Vedic literature gives the knowledge about the absolute truth and how he can take us to Brahmananda. Okay, so with this we'll stop. There are further things also which are actually part of this chapter, but we will kind of skip because most of it has already been discussed. We will start with the last section of this particular chapter, which is Shruti originates from the Supreme Lord, hence eternal and transcendental. We'll do that tomorrow, and then in next, this will be done in 5 minutes. Then after that, we'll jump into the second chapter, which will be talking about the Ishvara. We'll stop here. We are already out of time. So if you have any questions, we can take tomorrow at the start of the session. Thank you so much. Sri Radha Damodar Goswami ki, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.